All right. Hello again, everybody. I promise you won't be hearing from me all day. This is my second but last session, but I'm very excited to have Sherry up here with me this morning. I know many of you know Sherry. Sherry is always just a gold mine of knowledge. So we're going to be talking, I mentioned in the first session that we just launched the pharmacy feature in COB Smart. So we're going to be talking about that, kind of how it works. And then Sherry's going to talk about how she actually is running the pharmacy program at Anthem. I know many of you are interested in pharmacy, maybe don't use it yet, and are looking for ways to kind of operationalize that. So I definitely encourage you to take advantage of Sherry and the knowledge that she has about how they're handling COB for pharmacy today. And Sherry, I'll just allow you to quickly introduce yourself.
Thank you. Sherry, most of you know me as Murray for like 100 years, but I'm now Sherry Richardson. So you can call me either and I'll still respond to you. I've been with Anthem. I've been in the COB space. I'm going to say this real quietly, 37 years. Long time. And I have seen an just unbelievable growth in what we do. Very passionate about COB, very passionate about advancing our technologies and what's happening over these next few years in the space of what we do for our companies and for our members. And today we've just added pharmacy as one of those concepts and functions. So I'm happy to be here today to talk to you and maybe answer some questions.
All right, great, thank you. We have just obviously introduced ourselves. But just wanted to kind of go over the pharmacy tool that we've released. So this is really an extension of the medical tool. So it's utilizing the same file. You don't need to submit a separate file. You could submit your pharmacy data on the file that you use today. We then will run it through essentially the same process that we do for medical. We do have data validation available today on pharmacy. We have not turned that on yet because we do want to make sure that we get a good cohort that have sufficient overlaps between them to turn it on, but we are, that is available, so if that's something you're interested in and you would like to be one of the early adopters who's in that first cohort, please reach out to your account manager. You can reach out to me. We're looking to turn that on as soon as we have a sufficient cohort. So that would work exactly the same way that data validation does today for medical. It would generate the 270 to both of the payers in that pharmacy overlap. So you'll get to use the same process for pharmacy as you do for medical on data validation. Of course, we then are also going to be returning those pharmacy overlaps in your weekly file, so it comes back in the same file. There's no need to set up a separate file or intake process. Although we do actually have the option if you would like a pharmacy-specific file. So if you have a separate pharmacy team and you want us to just filter that pharmacy data into a separate file for you, that is also an option. You just need to let us know. The default is that all of your overlaps are sent in your regular weekly file. But if you'd like a pharmacy-specific file, that is an option. You just need to let us know and we can turn that on for you. And then, of course, we're also going to be displaying all those pharmacy overlaps in the portal the way that we do with medical. So this is really just an extension of this current program that you have. We are trying to make it as easy as possible to use, but we know that there is tremendous value in pharmacy COB data. And so we're just trying to find a way to make that more accessible for you all. And as I mentioned, so you would just be sending your pharmacy overlap in your weekly file. In the next slide, I'll just give a little more details on how you can do that if you're not doing that today. So we're getting both your medical and your pharmacy data through your weekly file. We're then matching those members the same way that we do for medical. We're applying the same matching logic and then applying the same primacy rules to those members. And then if you've opted into data validation, we then would run that regular validation step on those overlaps and then return that back to you. And as I mentioned, you can get that in one file, you can get that in two files, and of course it will also display in the portal. So there are two ways to submit pharmacy coverage. Once again, you do this through your regular weekly files. So if you have a member who everything for their pharmacy and their medical is the same, you can submit that on one line. You would just need to say that they have coverage type 1, which is medical, and coverage type 88, which is pharmacy. And we do have a technical guide, and we also have a pharmacy quick start guide that has all this information. So you don't need to remember all of this today. You can request that from your account manager, and it gives more detailed instructions on how to do this. But you can either submit them on one line if everything is the same, or if you have a member who has just pharmacy-only coverage, you would submit that on a separate line. Or if there's some differences between their pharmacy and their medical coverage, you would submit that on 2 lines in your weekly file. So there are 2 different options for submitting pharmacy membership. But if you're set up to submit medical membership today, it should be fairly easy to submit pharmacy membership. In the COB Smart portal, many of you are probably familiar with this display. We're just now also displaying the pharmacy membership here. So when you do those portal searches, you can pull up both medical and pharmacy information. So this is all displaying the same way that it does for medical for you today. We also pulled, now that we've turned the system on, we can actually start looking at some of the data that we have in the system. We have about 40 million pharmacy members that are currently being sent through COB Smart. And we are actually seeing so far that the rates for pharmacy are matching almost exactly the rates that we're seeing for medical. So we have a 9% COB rate that we're seeing of those 40 million members for pharmacy. So the opportunity that you have in medical, you have the same opportunity in pharmacy. We have about half of our participating health plans sending pharmacy membership. I know that with pharmacy, it kind of depends what maybe with your carve in, carve out, you may not own all of the carved out membership, but you can submit just your carved in membership. You don't have to submit it on everybody, just who you own, but we do strongly encourage all of you to start submitting your pharmacy membership if you do have it, because this is included in your COB Smart membership, and it's a great source of value if you're not tapping into that today. It's something that we strongly encourage you to do. We also have about a 57% determined primacy rate on pharmacy overlaps, which is very similar to what we have for medical. So we're very excited to see that this is, the opportunity for pharmacy is very, very similar to what we're seeing for medical. And, I know Shannon has made a plug for sending pharmacy. I know Sherry would love everybody to start sending their pharmacy membership. So just wanted to kind of share some of the data that we're seeing so far. And as I mentioned, data validation is now also available for pharmacy. So if that's something that you're interested in, we are very much excited about getting that turned on. So I'm going to turn it over to Sherry to kind of talk about the way that they use this today at Anthem.
Green button, right?
Yes.
Thank you. So first bullet, the big dollar sign, prescription drugs are expensive. I don't know about you, but every single day in the news, I'm hearing from the government or from a major pharmacy benefit manager or CVS, Walgreens, some story in the news about pharmacy drugs and what it's costing our members. And since the implementation, really, of COB Smart, as an industry, we've been talking about we need to COB pharmacy. These members are paying for 2 coverages, and they're never coordinating these 2 coverages. It's a disservice to our members. We need to implement COB pharmacy, right? So a few years ago, we collectively with multiple levels of membership at my company presented and talked about the lost opportunity for our members, for our employer groups, and for our companies, because we're not extending our coordination of benefit programs to extend to our pharmacy programs. Most of us, I know we have different demographics. Some of us have all lines of business. Some maybe are Medicare and senior government related. But at my company, we have membership in every line of business: individual, fully insured, ASO, Medicaid, Medicare, ACA, pharmacy, vision, dental, life, every line of business, right? And so we cross 100% of our members that could potentially have 2 coverages. As you indicated a moment ago, you were finding the exact same run rates. What we're finding as well, our members that have 2 coverages, almost 100% have 2 pharmacy coverages as well, and are only using 1 card. So we recognize that this was a service that's needed in the industry. Then over the development of our COB Smart program, and the expansion of the tool, and as we learn to work smarter, not harder, as I heard you talking about, our members and our customers have become COB savvy, right? They know now what the benefit is of using both of those insurance cards when they go to the doctor or to the hospital. And we've had a quick increase in inquiries, particularly with RFPs or at renewal time, saying, what are you doing for pharmacy? Why are we COB-ing pharmacy? We would like for you to COB pharmacy. So we listened, and a couple of years ago, we worked to develop pharmacy COB with our PBM, our Anthem PBM, and this was a little pre-sending data over to COB Smart, but we utilized our COB Smart files to do it. And so when I receive an overlap and I validate the primacy that Anthem is second to another payer, I ask, okay, who's their PBM, right? And I try to get that information. A lot of it's manual, but we identify who is that PBM and we load it in our membership systems. You talked a moment ago about, is it difficult to send your pharmacy info? It's really not. If you're in your membership systems, if you have those fields that collect your specialty business, then you can load your pharmacy benefit manager, and your effective dates, right? And then just include that in your submission over to COB Smart. So we were very excited when some of us began doing that effort and sharing that information in the files, because my team members were sitting at their desk starting from scratch. Every time we had a secondary overlap, they literally started from scratch and digged to find out who's the PBM for this member, who's the other one. We know there is one. Let's find out who it is and load it. So today we're getting a good percentage of those overlaps. It's still tiny from you, and it helps us to escalate the research to identify who that secondary PBM is. I'm excited about the launch of the validation because at our company, we and I know many of you are today, took advantage of the validation program. And it takes that extra validation step off the specialist. So today we participate in validation, and the specialist knows that they don't have to revalidate because it's already been done. And so I'm excited about the pharmacy revalidate, because today my specialist still has to revalidate that pharmacy overlap that we're sharing. But with the validation program, that's an admin savings for us that's going to help them move on to the next step of their COB Smart workflow. So when we began working to develop pharmacy, as many years as I've done COB, it was an eye-opener for me how different operations is for claims that are pharmacy-related versus claims that are after your doctor visit and after your hospital visit, right? It's not like that with a pharmacy claim. The pharmacy, Walgreens, CVS, Target, wherever you go, they want to be paid right when they hand you that drug. I think actually, they want to be paid before you hand you that drug. They're going to run your benefits and take your check and then hand you the bag, right? So point of sale. Everything is point of sale. So in my analytical mind, I started asking myself, I want to do this. I want to send this information over to our PBM so that we can COB pharmacy. But the last thing I want is a first mama walking away from the pharmacy counter without her prescription for her sick baby, right? We never want that to happen. So I had to ask myself, what are all of the possibilities? What are all the pros? What are all the cons? What could happen? And I need to make sure that there's something in place that prevents anyone from walking away from the counter without their drugs they need, because the insurance companies are discussing amongst them who should pay primary and who should pay second. So we identified, what are some of the pros, what are some of the cons, what are some of the things we need to work through, developed a way to make sure that no one ever walks away because Anthem is saying somebody else is prime and that somebody else doesn't have the other carrier information, right? We work with that on the back end. But we did realize, and very quickly, the benefit our members realized when they went to the counter that first time, and I actually had a real life experience where I was standing behind somebody waiting for my drugs, and the pharmacist said, "Oh, I need to run this through your other payer who also participates, right? First, and then I'll run your Anthem card." And she's like, "What? I know they do that with my doctor bills, but I didn't know you did that with my drugs." And then she was concerned about copays. Anyway, walked away with no copay. Walked away paying nothing. And that was a very happy person that was standing in front of me. And it made me feel good because I knew as an industry we were getting into the process of coordinating and doing this. And I could see with a real live example how it impacts our members. Once we went live with the pharmacy program, I don't know, some of you may have been doing claims and ops close to as long as me. I don't really know. But do you remember the term shoebox claims? Yes, exactly. Paper files. Thank you. That's when I started. Right, in the basement with paper files, and we used to save up all of our bills all year, and then at the end of the year, much to the insurance company's dismay, we sent them all in a shoebox or in a big envelope and said, "Pay me back now. Everything that I paid for my medical bills, and if I've got 2 insurances, oh, what a headache off paper spreadsheets, figuring out what I paid back to the member, right? What you pay secondary, what you pay back." But, oh my, we got shoebox claims again because members were calling our PBM saying, "You're COBing my drug claims. How far back can I go?" And I was like, "Oh, I didn't think about that." So they're sending claims back for however many months for timely filing, right? And asking us to pay, asking us to ask the other PBM to pay primary, us to coordinate, and they get a refund, right? And so now those of our members who are very accustomed to COB and handing over both cards at their doctor's office are making sure that the pharmacist knows to run both benefits so that they're hopefully walking away from that counter without paying or having a reduced out-of-pocket amount. And so that is the part of my job that makes me smile the biggest, is knowing that we did that for our customer. But we also now have employer groups that are recognizing that they're seeing additional increased savings because this program has been implemented. And then many of you have government business. So when we started with the pharmacy program a couple of years ago, Medicare was really, really ramping up their Part D compliance program. And if you sell Medicare Advantage with your pharmacy PBM, you know that that is a required compliance program. It consists of about 5 mandatory components with lots of reporting requirements, et cetera. So we had to work quickly to implement the Medicare Advantage process as well. So one of the advantages to developing the compliance program was that we were able to help our members to know that some of them that had Med A, Med B, didn't have 2 drug coverages because they had one maybe through their commercial payer. So if we were recognizing that their drug costs or out of pockets are extremely high, making sure they knew that if you're eligible for A and B, you're eligible for another drug payer as well, and the premium for that Part B might be a lot less than what you're paying out of pocket for your drugs every month. So that was another opportunity for us to extend help to our members, and then again to our employer groups, and then again to our company because of the reduced savings when we coordinate and pay secondary. So kind of quickly walk through kind of what a process looks like. We truly use all of our inventory data sources, but COB Smart is one of the big ones, right? HuFile and multiple inventory sources that we have, or channels. I'm not sure we call them channels at Anthem or concepts. But we started out by looking at a staff model and identifying what's the work difference going to look like for my frontline folks that are doing COB if I have them start doing this research to identify who's the other pharmacy, right? So we did some staff model, we did a little adjustment on our resources and created a workflow for them to begin identifying if they have 2 coverages, who's that other PBM. And when we got that medical overlap or that Medicare overlap, we start to identify who's that other PBM. We make sure we load it in our claims and our membership system, where you would load your membership COB info and make sure that it gets passed onto those whom we work for with repository, COB Smart and CMS, right? So next, you've got to make sure that for COB to work, you got to make sure that your contracted PBM and the pharmacies who do your drugs have that information passed to them. So we just created a nightly batch of everything that we identified that day gets uploaded to membership, passed over to our PBM, which then goes into the pharmacist's hands. And he's got whatever I loaded today. If I loaded that Sherry has other pharmacy coverage today, I go to the pharmacy counter tomorrow. If it says that this other payer's primary, they're gonna let me know. They're gonna run it through the first primary and then the secondary, right? I'm right there at the pharmacy's counter, but that stuff is extremely important. If you want your COB process to work, you gotta make sure that that info is getting passed to your PBM. And then the pharmacist is adjudicating in real time based on the pharmacy information that I'm providing each day on that nightly file that goes over. We put real emphasis on working timely our COB Smart and our HUE data and making our updates to membership so that there's less and less inquiries or issues, if you will, at that pharmacy counter when somebody goes in to get their drugs. So we apply a lot of focus to make sure that if somebody termed or changed coverages, that we update it as quick as possible. And as you all know that do COB Smart, no matter how hard you try, you're never going to load today that my coverage changed today and get that info out right to the pharmacist. So there will be circumstances where a member will say, actually, I just termed that coverage, Friday or whatever. I don't have that coverage anymore. We implemented what I call workarounds in that pharmacist system with our pharmacy as CVS, so that they go ahead, they override it, they process that claim for the member, they send me an inquiry, it comes straight into my COB team's hands, and they make sure to expedite getting that research done and that change made so that the member goes back to the counter again. This time they didn't get that stress of, oops, wait a minute, what do you mean? I don't have that other coverage anymore. So, but there are, like I said, there are some workflows that you have to consider with it being point of sale to make sure that your members always get their prescription drugs when they're at the counter. Early lessons learned. We expanded the commercial. We started with our implementing pharmacy for our government business. First and foremost, because of the regulatory requirement with CMS that we implement a Part D compliance program yesterday. So we started with that program, kind of perfected it. Then we moved into our commercial business, right? Commercial started with our business, which is your fully insured. Made sure we had it working, operating really well, and then we expanded it onto our ASO clients, offered it to them as a contractual offering if they would like for us to do their pharmacy COB. We examined our contracts, and I'm not a contract person, provider contracting, or client group, although I answer a lot of questions about what we do COB related. I don't write contracts, but we wanted to make sure legally that what do our contracts say today, and what do they need to say, and what do we need to make sure our customers understand before we start this pharmacy COB process. Because even though it's a good news story, you need to make sure you get all your legalities in place. So that's one of the early lessons learned. We provided us an opportunity, I mentioned this a moment ago, to let our members know who are Medicare eligible that their out-of-pocket drug cost was probably more than what they would pay if they purchased a Part D and then did COB. And so it was an opportunity for them to save money. We increased member satisfaction. I've seen multiple real-life stories, heard from members. The shoebox claim was was when they start sending them in envelopes and wanting us to process retroeffectively prime and second and send money back. That's when I knew that our pharmacy program was successful. And then there was a little renegotiation with our PBM and our related pharmacy, and some enhanced work to make sure that they had real-time tools right in front of them, so that we weren't increasing the admin work on the pharmacist or the folks at the counter to do the COB process. We wanted to make sure that the CVS system and all of the other pharmacist systems had what they needed to make this work very efficiently and timely and have zero impact to our member and a minimal impact to the pharmacist. So what are we seeing? When we implemented COB Smart and then we moved, we saw, as you've seen, a wonderful return on investment of identifying our members who have other coverage, most importantly, helping that member save by using both cards. But when we expanded it to pharmacy, I took a look and analyzed the data before we started doing pharmacy, and we only had 0.3% of OHI pharmacy infos in our system. When we began the program, the process of having our specialists, every time there's an overlap and every time we're second, find out who that pharmacy is, we immediately, on our commercial business, went up to a 5.5% identification. And as most of you know, that's pretty much industry average of members that have two coverages. So I feel pretty good that we're capturing most of our members that have two commercial coverages. We're capturing their two pharmacy coverages as well. On our Medicare Advantage, it was about the same. We went up to a 2.7%. That's kind of consistent with what we see in our MA population that has two coverages as well. In Medicaid, we already had a couple programs in place. If you administer Medicaid, you know that states have some pretty stringent rules and laws, and they want you to either do the COB or hire vendors to do it or use their eligibility files to make sure you're capturing when somebody else is primary to Medicaid. So we have that in place already. We were already capturing about 11%, but out the gate, we immediately increased that by 1.5% to 12.5%. We're 2 years into our program. We haven't implemented everything I want to implement yet, but we've done the foundation, which is putting our teams to work and our tools to work, COB Smart and Hue, and helping us to identify when we have two pharmacy coverages. But so far, we're seeing about a 4-to-1 ROI. Financially, what's your investment? So I'm getting $4 for every $1. 90% of our cases or our claims where our PBM is secondary, we're seeing a reduction in claims payments. So about 10% we're still paying maybe the 100% for whatever reason. Maybe that drug's not covered on the formulary for their primary. And if it doesn't, it bounces over to us and we pay what the other payer didn't, right? If it's covered under our benefit, just like with commercial. But the cool part is industry average, you know, when you're secondary, you pay about 80-20, right? 82% reduction on average per claim. When we're secondary, we have an 82% savings on what we would have paid had we been primary. We do have a little bit of help with our pharmacy program because we wanted to expedite getting Part D compliance on board quick. So we have a vendor that helps us with Part D compliance only. And we're working internally to internalize that process and begin doing that process ourselves. We're offering this, I mentioned, to our ASO clients now and contracting with them, making sure they understand how the process works and what it costs. We're starting to use more of our COB Day Smart data with participating organizations who are sending your data over. And I think, like I said, I'm pretty excited about the validation opportunity with pharmacy because today my specialist we have the validation with our medical, so they don't have to revalidate. But when they do the pharmacy, even if you tell me, we still revalidate it to make sure that there's not been a term in the last week or two, or a change or whatever. So with the validation program, we'll be able to trust that data and proceed to automate it. So that would be a great admin lift for us on that program as well. Thank you. I'm done. I hope I stayed on time. Did I stay on time? Good. I'm happy to answer any questions. Sure.
What did you do with your PBMs?
Sending the mic over.
What did you with your PBMs in terms of sending them information before you started getting the RX data? In other words, if you knew they had medical coverage with another carrier that was primary, were you sending any kind of indicator to the PBM to say there is another carrier, or you weren't doing anything?
Very little. The opportunity there was there, but the process, it was minimal. It was on a as requested basis.
So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, well, it was on an as requested basis. If a member called up and said, hey, I want to use both coverages, we would load it and pass it over manually to the PBM, make sure it got uploaded in their membership system. Today, we upload everything in my legacy system, create a data batch file, and just send a very high-quality, accurate file straight over to the PBM of
Yeah.
every transaction that happened that day.
And we send a daily file as well. We only have medical right now. We don't have the
Right.
RX, but I'm
Okay.
trying to determine whether or not, and I know your ROI was 4-1, which is really great. But we send a indicator indicating they do have other primary coverage, because most policies today, certainly Part C, Medicare Advantage, Medicaid, ACA policies
Mm-hmm. Right.
are all required to have that type of coverage.
Right, right.
So it's a very small segment that could possibly not have RX, but have
Exactly.
medical.
Exactly.
So I'm trying to understand where the big benefit would be from what we're doing today to go into the RX, to opting
use
into
it.
the system.
Yeah, to
Does that
use
make
in the
sense?
program. I think I'm following. So you're asking basically from what you're doing today, what would be the increase of using this program? A lot of that is dependent upon how many of us participating begin to send our pharmacy information, right? But the benefit is both an increase in getting the information who the other coverage is, and then an elimination of the manual work that you would have to do, because the system is, and those of us participating are sharing.
Yeah, I guess, but if the assumption is if you have medical coverage as primary, you also have RX coverage.
That
And so if
assumption,
we're passing that to the PBM,
right,
it kind of serves the same purpose.
right. If you already know who that other PBM is and you're passing it, it does serve
Well,
the same
we would be
purpose.
sending, so I work for a TPA, so we would
Okay.
be
Oh,
sending it
okay.
to our plans.
Oh,
PBM.
okay. I'm again, that's a separate conversation, but it does sound like you've got it pretty well covered for your TPA.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if there's additional opportunities, we're obviously
Right.
always looking to identify
Right.
them and take advantage. But
Right.
I
The
just-
only thing I can think of maybe is it might reduce your administrative effort. I don't know without maybe talking with you.
Okay, I'd love to
But
talk to you.
sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Hi, sure. Dean Sterling from Horizon.
Hi, Dean.
Hi. Question. Do you send the pharmacy information to CAQH, or do you have your PBM send it over?
We send it on our weekly batch files. Yes, sir.
Because we have a PBM, and that's something that we're trying to figure out. All right, thank you.
Hi, Jake Hartberger with Molina. Can you elaborate on how you use on your Medicare book of business the pharmacy data and coordinate that with your MSP files or Mark's OHI files that you are getting? So you
Not
get
quite.
daily Mark's OHI files from CMS for
Right.
your
And-
Medicare business. How do you supplement that or coordinate amongst each other?
Okay, so we focus on and primarily use our HUE data files for the same purpose. So we're either identifying who the other coverage is when I identify duals from the HUE or from the COB Smart. And so the process is kind of streamlined a little bit, and that everything feeds out of our membership system. And so no matter what avenue of work we're working, whether it's HUE, COB Smart, inquiries, et cetera, we're doing this deep dive to identify the other PBM. We load it into one central system, and then that one system passes one full file over to the pharmacy, so we kind of streamlined it.
But are you leveraging the MSP flag on the Mark's OHI files that you receive directly from CMS, apply that, and then supplement that with this pharmacy data from the COB
Exactly.
Smart program and
Exactly.
then pass that over.
Exactly, yes.
Hi, good morning. Novelet Wallace with Johns Hopkins. My question is, do you share access to the portal with the PBM for, validation in case there's a mismatch? And
Are you referring to the CAQH portal?
yes, the CAQH portal.
Yes, we do.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know, CAQH, we probably share it with all of our ops. I don't know if it's 100%, but even our ops team, I don't think so, that would be thousands, but we do share it with our ops teams, membership, service, et cetera, so that they can, if they have anything come to them, the membership team takes a call from a client maybe, that rather than having to send an inquiry over and wait for COB to work it, they have access to go right in and look at what our team has and what you've shared with us in the COB portal. So we do share it, yes.
Did you add another layer of analytics, FTEs, to your area once you
Yes.
had COB?
Yes, we did. We did that. We continue to analyze our staff model based on our inventory, whether and based on our membership increases or decreases in certain areas. We make sure to adjust our staff models, but we absolutely had to adjust to develop the pharmacy program. Yes, and that's not just our frontline, but our quality auditors, our trainers, our across the board. We had to take into consideration the additional concept and the differences, and then what was the increase in admin for our frontline specialists. We're centralized. Our COB, 100% of it's all done within one area and in our company. I know it's done differently, but we have a tool, a mechanism that pulls in 100% of my inventory and then rolls everything up to one ID so that one specialist, no matter which platform or which product it is, can work everything we might have today on that member. Maybe we have an inquiry, maybe we have a claim that pended, and it might have come up today, this week on my COB Smart file that there was a change. So that one person accesses it and works all of the different pieces of inventory that might be happening, make sure that they update and correct everything for that entire family, which I don't know where Makito went, but you might have noticed Kim and I smiling. We're real happy to hear about that, the family dependence enhance on the portal. But yes, we absolutely did increase the staff, and we consistently do a review of our staff models to make sure we adjust according to our membership in inventories. Anything else? I think,
When you said that you identify the PBM of the other area. Thank you. When you identify the PBM, is that a completely manual process?
yeah, Lord, no, like, right.
It's manual, in fact, that you find out that this carrier used this PBM, so we would compile a master list of,
Right.
I don't like talking to these things. So we would compile a list, a master list of, so the specialists could use it. So it became manual in the beginning, but then it's become more as we develop.
Yes.
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 And we do just, when you send over your pharmacy data through the file, the PBM is one of the fields that if you're sending data, we require you to send the PBM information. So you also get that through COB
Right.
Smart. So I think,
Right.
Kip, one of the questions you were asking was kind of what would be the additional value? I think you would need they would, in order to do COB, they'd need to know who the other PBM is, which is not necessarily going to be a one-to-one match
Right.
with the health plan. So getting that PBM information is critical
Right.
for the pharmacist to adjudicate that claim.
Right.
Would that be because maybe the member doesn't have their other ID card?
Yes, or it may be carved out, and so the
Right, some
may be
PBMs, some is carved
different.
out.
Yeah, so that's
Exactly.
kind of the, I think, the
Exactly.
additional
Exactly.
information they would need.
Yeah.